The first shot fired in the Battle of Alcatraz wasn't a bullet, it was the quiet click of a stolen key that refused to turn. On the morning of May 2nd, 1946, the most feared prison in America hummed with its usual metallic rhythm. Doors slamming. Boots pacing. Officers calling roll with the same hollow authority that held the island together. But inside cell block C, one inmate stood unnervingly still. Bernard Coy, lean, watchful, and desperate in a way that had sharpened him more than it had broken him, waited for a moment he believed would never come again. Before we go deeper, if stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this one only gets darker. Coy had spent months studying guard movements from his cell, mapping out blind spots, and starving himself just enough to slip between the bars of the gun gallery overhead. Alcatraz wasn't a prison to him anymore, it was a machine, and he'd spent every waking hour learning how to break it. That morning, the machine finally misfired. When Officer Bill Miller stepped into the gallery, Coy launched with silent precision. He stripped the guard's keys, his baton, and, most importantly, his rifle. Below, two other inmates, Marvin Hubbard and Joseph Kretzer, moved into position. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The plan was already tattooed into their minds. Within minutes, the inmates overpowered additional officers, dragged them into cells, and locked them away. Coy's heart hammered as he tested the key ring. One of those keys was supposed to open the final door to the yard, the door that meant freedom, boats, and the cold shock of San Francisco Bay. But when Hubbard twisted the key into the lock, the sound that came back was wrong. A dull, empty rattle. Not the clean mechanical slide of an open path, but the mocking reminder that one mistake can ruin everything. Coy felt it instantly. The wrong key. The wrong door. The wrong chance. And then the island began to shift. Alarms barked through the corridors. Guards scrambled to arm themselves. Somewhere deep inside the cell house, someone yelled the word every inmate feared: escape. But Coy, Kretzer, and Hubbard didn't back down. If the door to freedom was sealed, then they would turn the cell house itself into a battleground. Coy raised the stolen rifle and positioned himself behind a concrete pillar, breathing hard through the dust and panic. It wasn't about escape anymore. It was about control, control of the weapons room, control of the hostages, control of the narrative that would define the next 48 hours of terror on the Rock. The first gunshot cracked through the block like a lightning strike. And just like that, Alcatraz, America's most secure prison, descended into a war zone. But what the guards didn't know, and what the inmates could already feel tightening around them, was that the real battle hadn't even begun. Because before the next hour ended, someone inside that cell house would make a decision so reckless it would change the entire course of the standoff. The moment the echoes of that first gunshot faded, a different kind of sound filled the cell house: silence. Heavy, calculated, waiting to see who would make the next move. For a place built on routine and control, Alcatraz had suddenly become a maze of shifting power, cut-off lines of sight, and men calculating their odds with every breath. Coy scanned the block from the gun gallery, gripping the stolen rifle so tightly his knuckles blanched. Below him, Marvin Hubbard paced like a caged animal, adrenaline pushing him toward action faster than logic could catch up. And in the shadows near the hostages, Joseph Kretzer kept his jaw clenched, watching everything with a predator's restraint. Each man wanted freedom. But each had a different breaking point. As guards regrouped outside the barricaded cell house, word spread quickly across the island. Officers were down. Guns were missing. Hostages were held. The warden ordered the block sealed off, buying time while reinforcements assembled. But time didn't calm the tension, it stretched it, thinned it, made every second feel like the tightening of a noose. Coy tried to keep order, barking commands to the others. Hold positions. Keep the hostages alive. We don't fire unless they do. But even as he said it, a truth gnawed at him: they weren't getting out. They were cornered in a fortress that had been built exactly for this moment. Then came the psychological pressure, subtle at first, then suffocating. The guards outside started playing tricks with the acoustics of the cell house. Footsteps approached, then faded. Keys jangled. Boots scuffed the concrete in irregular patterns designed to unsettle. Every echo whispered the same message: we can take our time. You can't. Inside, tension between the inmates began to simmer. Hubbard slammed his hand on a steel bench. They're stalling, Bernie. They're waiting us out. We need to push through that door, blast it, break it, something. Coy snapped back. And go where? Into the yard with snipers lined up on every tower? We push blindly, we die blindly. Kretzer didn't join the argument. His silence said more than either of them wanted to admit. His eyes kept drifting to the hostages, 2 guards battered, tied, and terrified. Coy saw the look and stepped toward him. Don't even think about it, Joe, he warned. Kretzer didn't blink. Their leverage. And leverage is slipping. It was the first crack in their alliance. A small one, but deadly. Because the moment an escape attempt becomes a survival attempt, loyalty turns into currency, and the most dangerous man in the room is the one with nothing left to lose. Then, another shift. A metallic clank echoed through the block, followed by the grinding of a mechanism the inmates hadn't expected to hear. The guards had opened a utility corridor above the cell house, access only staff were ever supposed to know about. Coy's eyes narrowed. They're moving on us. Fast. But Kretzer stepped toward the shadows with a different expression, half fear, half opportunity. Because that hidden corridor meant something none of them were prepared for. The prison had defense systems they hadn't mapped, and the guards were about to use them. And the next decision made in that cell house would tear the entire escape crew apart. The first blast shook the cell house like a heartbeat gone wrong. Dust rained from the rafters. The lights flickered. And in that split second, every man inside realized the fight had crossed a threshold. This was no longer a standoff. It was a siege. Guards had positioned themselves along the hidden utility corridor, firing downward into strategic angles of the block. Each shot cracked through steel and concrete, driving the inmates behind makeshift cover. Coy yelled orders, but the sound of rifle fire swallowed his voice whole. Hubbard returned shots blindly, the recoil thudding through his arms. Fear had flooded him now, pushing out every trace of strategy. We can't hold this, Bernie, he shouted. They're bringing the whole damn island down on us. He wasn't wrong. Outside, Marines had arrived. Tear gas shells arced overhead. Spotlights cut white beams through the cellhouse windows, turning dust into glowing fireflies drifting through chaos. The prison's walls, once symbols of control, now felt like a tomb slowly sealing shut. Amid the roar, Kretzer made his choice. With a grim set to his jaw, he moved toward the hostages. Coy sprinted after him, grabbing his arm. Don't. Kretzer shook him off with a violence born of desperation. They've already decided our fate. I'm not leaving witnesses to write the story for them. It was the moment everything collapsed. Gunfire erupted from all directions. Guards advanced. The inmates scattered into blind corners of the block. The hostages screamed for help through the smoke. And in the final minutes of the battle, the prison became a maze of shadows where no one could tell friend from enemy, intention from instinct. Coy held on the longest, pinned behind a concrete pillar with the rifle he had once believed would change his life. Now it was little more than a weight in his shaking hands. Smoke stung his lungs. Blood crawled down his forearm from a ricochet. The escape he had imagined 100 times dissolved into the thick haze around him. When the final push came, grenades, coordinated fire, and shouted commands, the inmates' defenses cracked. One by one, the surviving men dropped their weapons, choking on gas, bleeding, exhausted. Kretzer, Hubbard, and Coy fell in the firefight, their desperate plan buried under the thunder of weapons and the cold resolve of the guards reclaiming their fortress. As officers stormed the block, pulling bodies from under debris and dragging survivors into the blinding daylight outside, a chilling truth settled over the rock. For 48 hours, the most secure prison in America had lost control. And it took overwhelming force to take it back. In the aftermath, the surviving conspirators faced trial inside the same institution they had tried to tear open. The verdict was swift. The consequences were absolute. And Alcatraz, shaken, scarred, and newly aware of its own vulnerabilities, quietly rebuilt the systems that had failed. The Battle of Alcatraz became more than an escape attempt. It became a warning. A reminder that even the strongest walls crumble when desperation pushes hard enough. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.